You're listening to The Philip Jordan Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Philip Jordan Show. I am your host, Philip Jordan, in-studio host and producer for Nothing Was Football, a 96.9, the legend and Auburn writer for Last Word on college football. On this week's edition of the Philip Jordan Show, we're going to be talking about some rule changes NFL made on Tuesday and how that also could impact the future of college football. And I'll be joined by John Vogel from the Sick Podcast with Draft Vogel. John knows all things NFL draft. He studies it. He's one of the best guys out there covering the draft. We will talk about quarterbacks. We'll also talk about Troy running back, Kamani Vidal. That and much more on this edition of the Philip Jordan Show. You can check out the Philip Jordan Show podcast over at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater. You can email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. All right, so, usually on the show, we'll go ahead and jump into the guests. But I actually wanted to spend the first couple of minutes talking about the new rule changes within the NFL that were made on Tuesday. Predominantly here, we talk college football, but this is some big stuff that what the NFL is doing. And we're going to start things off by the new kickoff rule that NFL will be using. Now, this will be a 1-year trial, so next year they will vote again and see if they approve it, want to tweak it, or just go back to the old kickoff. And on Tuesday, the NFL approved a new kickoff format for the 2024 season. Will be like the XFL model to increase returns and decrease injuries. Now, if you're watching on Facebook, over on YouTube or X, Twitter, wherever you're watching the show, you can see on screen I have up the old XFL model. Now, the XFL and the USFL merged. They kick off this weekend for that, so we know that they're not using this kickoff anymore. They're going to a more traditional route, which they'll probably go back to this next year. So now it's like the NFL is using it. Like I said, it will be like the XFL model that they used in 2000 and they used last year. 10 players on the kicking team and at least 9 players on the receiving team will line up just 5 yards apart and will not begin running until the ball gets back to the returner. Will not be full speed when crashing into each other either. That's a big part. Believe that the injuries do come from. Kicker will kick from his own 35, and the 10 other players will be on the opponent's 40. Receiving team will line up at their own 35-yard line. Kick must land between the 20 and the goal line. Out of bounds, kick or kicks short of the 20 will go to the 40. Touchbacks will go to the 30. Now, like I said, this will be a 1-year trial with this. Now, Kirby Smart has these same thing. Now, he's part of the competition and rules committee and all that stuff with college football. Kirby Smart said this: they know what they want, they know what they're trying to do, and they're going to get it right. And then hopefully we can look at ourselves if the kickoff is not part of our game. He also went on to say, talking to reporters, and this all comes from, these quotes come from an article over at Bleacher Report. They felt like you can't develop players in the NFL anymore without special teams. Then he goes on talking about Charlie Warner, Nakobe Dean. Their first years, they played 10 times more snaps on special teams than they did at their position. So those snaps are now irrelevant because of a fair catch or a touchback. If you want to develop your roster, you need special teams to develop it. And we feel the same way. I developed my roster on special teams. The guys last year that started on the units will probably start at a position this year. You need those plays to be a part of it, but you have to be safe. And that is Kirby Smart talking about the rule the NFL is doing. And I fully believe that if this is successful, and I actually believe it will be as a fan, as a person who's watched the XFL do this in 2020 and 2023 last season, it works. And it's a safer play. You have more returns, and that's something people want. Because to be honest, right now, and it's getting that way in college football with the fair catches and stuff, and especially in the NFL, very rarely do you even get a return with the traditional kickoff rule. A lot of times for people, that's a bathroom break, or go get you a drink or a bag of chips or something to eat, or just go do something else during the kickoff. It's not exciting. It's not something you feel like you need to watch because nothing was happening anymore. It's almost getting to the point where you kind of feel like it's the kickoff just going to get banned altogether. So this is a way the NFL is to say, okay, let's do this. It's going to look really different for a lot of NFL fans. There's a lot of people may not watch the XFL. And there's also some concerns, okay, that the talent level is obviously higher in the NFL than the XFL. Faster players, maybe they could cause some injuries that we didn't see in the XFL, but we shall see. But again, if this works here, I could very much see college football jumping into it. Now, another rule change that the NFL went with on Tuesday was the hip drop tackle being eliminated. NFL team owners on Monday unanimously approved that bans players from using a swivel technique to tackle an opponent. A violation will result in a 15-yard penalty and could ultimately result in fines for player. Of course, this is a feature where defensive players grabbing ball carriers and then dragging them down while unweighting themselves by dropping their hips results in 10 to 25 times more injuries than any other tackles. It's not something we see a lot of, but apparently they have their studies and injuries have happened. NFL executive Jeff Miller said the hip drop tackle was used 230 times last season and resulted in 15 players missing time with injuries. NFL Competition Committee Chairman Rich McKay had this to say: "It doesn't get used very often, but when it is used, it's incredibly injurious to the runner. The runner is purely defenseless, and I have heard defenders say it before, and I hear them. Hey, you're putting me in a really tough spot. You're saying I can't hit here. What do I do?" And my response has always been, well, you can't do that, and that's just because the guy you're hitting is defenseless and has no way to protect himself. So we've got to protect him, and you've got to come up with other ways. And you know what? They do. Okay, I get what he's saying there with that comment, but at the same time, how close are we to getting the flag football? And again, like the kickoff thing, it's a trickle-down effect. This will make it the way down to college, and it will make its way back into high school and other ranks of football. And at the same time, yes, we want to prevent injuries. We want to make the game safer. We want, and particularly from an NFL standpoint, you want your stars on the field. Those are the guys that sell the tickets. I get that. And that's 100% true. But at the same time, at one point does this game become flag football? There's been a lot of former and current players, NFL Player Association, and they're not happy with this. I kind of hope this is a deal. Maybe they can revisit this one this time next year and kind of taper back on it. It's just, look, injuries are part of football. It happens. Players are going to get hurt. But this is not really something that feels like it happens a lot. And I don't know. I'm just thinking in my head, what was an injury that happened? And at some point, it's just, okay, let's just put flags on them. And let's just go that way. So I feel if this is something that sticks in the NFL for a while, college football will do it, and all of football will do it. Just like with targeting. The horse collar tackle, that was one that started in the NFL and it made its way down into college. So, and we see some other rules that could be coming from NFL to college. We saw it with the clock changes from last year, the clock not stopping after first downs. And now we're going into this. I just think a 2-minute warning could be coming to college and other stuff like that that's in the NFL. So we shall see. It's going to be very interesting where these goes. How do they work in the NFL? And then once again, I know I'm repeating myself, but come down into college and see how that goes. So we shall see. All right, I'm going to take a quick 1-minute break. When we return, I will be joined by John Vogel, and we will be talking all things quarterbacks and Troy running back Kamani Vidal when it pertains to the NFL draft. You're listening and watching The Philip Jordan Show.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows. Like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at night, and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits, 106.7 KMX, Today's Country, 95.5 WTVY, and Music 107.7. Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
All right, everybody, we are pretty much a month away from the NFL draft. It's really coming on as fast. Draft season has flown by. And joining me, we're going to talk some quarterbacks, and we're going to talk about a Troy prospect too as well. But joining me is my guy I go to for NFL Draft, John Vogel, NFL Draft Lounge. You check him out on this podcast, the Sick Podcast with Draft Vogel. And John, I appreciate it. I know this is your time of the year.
This is Christmas time. Yeah, you know how like with Christmas you've got Advent that's like, the 25 days before Christmas or whatever it is. Like this is Advent for me. Okay, this is the month before the draft. Now we're getting close, and this is when everything starts to come together.
Yeah, this is kind of like Thanksgiving time if we were equating to Christmas, because it's like Thanksgiving is here. I mean, I don't know. Do you have a feast a month before the draft? I don't know, but it's
Easter.
There you go.
Easter dinner. Yep.
Hey, and you do get some live football on that Easter weekend if you want to watch it with the UFL coming up. We're not here to talk about that, but it is there. It is.
Yes.
And I wanted to, obviously I want to have y'all talk about these quarterbacks, and just so many of them and great prospects coming out of college. All of them mentioned outside of Caleb Williams and the normal prospects. But first, I want to talk about a guy you recently had on your podcast, Kamani Vidal, former Troy running back, great running back at Troy, over 4,000 yards in his career, and really was a catalyst for that football team, especially the last 2 years. I mean, it was a stat that was going around when he went over 50 yards, they pretty much won football games. What's just your big takeaway with Kamani Vidal as a pro prospect?
First off, I think it was his dad was a star running back at Florida A&M, so running back is in his genes. I know I would listen to actually afterwards, and I felt stupid that I didn't, get into this with him when I interviewed him, but I heard him on the Sirius radio talking with, some of their hosts on there, and he was talking about, they talked extensively about his dad and how his dad was able to teach him a lot of the stuff about the game and, the stuff that his dad does off the field as well. So he comes from a really good background, and I think that's a huge thing if you're a prospect coming out of a smaller school, that your background is really good. You come from a good place, a good home, good family, and he's been around football his entire life. So those are a couple of things that are huge to take away when you actually get into his game and stuff. You're kind of blown away by some of the things that he can do on a consistent basis. He tested way better than anybody could have guessed. Ran a 4.46. That's a good above average for a running back. 37.5 vertical, 10 broad jump, which are above average for running backs, well above average. So I thought that his field vision is going to get a little bit better with time. He was able to kind of lean on that athletic ability while he's at Troy, to make big plays happen. But and that's that when you can pull off things like that at the level that you're on, just being one of the best athletes as soon as you step on the field every single game that you play, it's easy to lean on your natural athletic ability and strength, to make those plays happen. And I think he's got some stuff to learn about where he'll just continue as he sees more football and understands it a little bit better with how to set up defenders, with how to work his blocks. But there's no doubt he could be an explosive weapon, and I think he's going to be a rotational running back in the league.
What do you see as his kind of like where he can land in the draft potentially?
I think we're talking day 3. I don't think you're going to see too many running backs come off the board before the 4th round, and there's not a lot of consensus across the NFL right now with where running backs are. Who likes this running back? Who likes that running back? There's you could talk to one guy. Daniel Jeremiah was talking about this too, and it's very true. You could talk to one guy with one team, and they'll tell you, oh, player A is our running back 1. And you go talk to another team, and, they could be in the same division, and they're like, oh, that's our running back 8, running back 9. There's so much variance across the league this year at that position, you're not going to see a lot of guys get pushed up into the second day of the draft. There won't be any in the first day, I don't think. And so when you get to the fourth day or the third day, fourth round, fifth round, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these guys come off the board. And that's where I would expect Kamani in that fifth, maybe very early sixth range.
So, looking at the quarterbacks, and I told you all fair is going to go a little different. And probably a lot of people, I listen to shows all over the country, national shows, regional shows. And Caleb Williams is always the first one to get there. Why don't I actually go with the number 2 pick? I mean, it's pretty much, we can almost pencil in Caleb Williams, Bears, number 1. Number 2 has been interesting because I feel like during the college football season, it felt like Drake May was, for most people, consensus number 2. And some people had him at number 1 and thought, hey, maybe he should be the top pick. It feels like he has fallen off. Why do you think that is?
There's a few things. I think it's, first off, everybody was expecting him to kind of take a step, in his second year as a starter, and we really didn't see that at all. So that's the first thing I think that people are holding against him. And secondly, I think when you take some of his raw, fundamentals, some of the mechanics that he throws with, his feet are still kind of a little bit of a mess, and you haven't seen that really improve over the draft process. Kind of like, we saw Josh Allen take massive strides when he went through the process with just his feet. We haven't seen that from Drake May. So I think people are kind of starting to wonder at this point, has he hit his ceiling? Like, is this as good as he's going to get? Was North Carolina working with the best that they could? And so when you kind of have those questions and there's 3 other guys on the board that are really good at the position, it can push you down. And I think in this instance, that's kind of what happened to Drake is, people understand that he still has some things that he needs to work on. He would best be suited to come into the league, sit for a year, and then step in and play after he's kind of adjusted. That's probably not going to happen if he's taken early enough. And so when you have other options that you feel a lot better about them playing right away, you're going to go lean on that. There's, take Caleb, just for example, that's a guy that's been a starter for 2.5 years. Take Jaden Daniels, that's a guy that started 5 years. And so when you kind of take all those things into consideration, it would make sense why Drake would kind of be the guy that's dropping down the boards a little bit.
And I know it did feel like, too, for a little bit there, Jaden Daniels may have been the guy that the Commanders were looking at. I mean, when they went and got Marcus Mariota, that almost kind of told you, because a lot of times I think in NFL, you want your backup to be like your starter, because then if he's not, then you got to completely change your offense, and you really can't do that mid-game. Your starter goes out, what you going to do? So you look at Mariota, running quarterback, he could run the read plays or running quarterback plays if you want to do that. So Jaden Daniels, I think from an observer's view, not somebody that's in the draft process or follows the draft like you do, Jaden Daniels seems like the guy. But now we see J.J. McCarthy's rising up. Betting odds are now saying he could be the number 2 guy. What has it been about J.J. McCarthy you have seen that says, okay, he can jump up and be in that spot?
There's a couple big things here, because first off, we do have to acknowledge right now it's Lion season. Okay, yeah. So there's a lot, especially with the owners' meetings going on right now and the rule changes with the committees. We've seen the hip drop, tackle drop, we've seen the kickoff change, we've seen a bunch of different rule changes come into play. So this is an opportune time to go out there and start feeding some disinformation to the media and start making them think, hey, we might go this way or we might go that way with our pick. Now, what was interesting about the McCarthy report from Tom Pelissero yesterday that really started to skyrocket these betting odds is he wasn't saying that it was Washington that was saying they were going to take McCarthy. It was all the other GMs in the league, the other executives that collectively believed that McCarthy is most likely the 2nd overall pick. Now, when they got Mariota, yeah, I agree with you. That made all the sense in the world. It looked like Jaden Daniels was pretty much a lock at 2. And then you also have to consider the offensive coordinator. There's Cliff Kingsbury. He's working with a defensive-minded head coach in Dan O'Quinn. So if Dan Quinn is defense, that means Cliff's running the offense. This is going to be Cliff's style of quarterback, and Jaden would seem to fit that a little bit more. You can also see how JJ does. But to get into JJ, to answer that part of the question, there's 2 huge things that JJ has that are tremendous for him. First off, the endorsement of Jim Harbaugh. That is not just a guy propping up his dude saying, hey, I want him to be really successful. Jim's a very very serious guy who means everything that he really says. There's not much that comes out of his mouth that he's not, you know, he's not being truthful or honest about. When it comes to the quarterback position, Jim is one of the best evaluators at it. He's one of the best coaches at the position, and if you look at the players that he's worked with over his career, you go back to Stanford when he was the head coach there. He's working with Andrew Luck, first overall pick, had a really good NFL career going until Colts didn't take care of him. He retired. He takes over the 49ers to Colin Kaepernick and goes to a Super Bowl. Like, just let that sink in for a second. Like, that's crazy when you think about that. Especially with the success that Kaepernick had as soon as Harbaugh went back to college. And then the quarterbacks that he's had at Michigan too, getting the absolute best out of those guys in those situations. So, for him to say that JJ's the best that he's ever had, that he's ever coached, that's a singing endorsement of JJ. So that's the first thing that helps him. The second thing is I didn't think I was going to like him that much, but when I actually put on the tape and I started looking at him, I was like, holy cow, this guy can play. Like, he's amazing, and you really saw the flashes. You're really going off of flashes with him, which is the little things that pop on tape, right? Where you're like, man, that was such a good throw at that point. And that was a 3rd down and 6, and they needed 7 yards. And he just put it straight between 2 defenders. Couldn't have placed it any better. Got it to his guy, so he was really good in 3rd down and conversions in those situations where you need to make a play. And when you take all the flashes, and you go back to TCU, the playoff game last year, he was dealing the entire game in a dogfight because neither defense could play that day. And a lot of it was JJ with the way he was making those throws. But, you're going off the flashes, and he's interviewed really well. He's really smart. So when you take all that into consideration as a general manager in the league, you're going to lean on, this guy could be a franchise quarterback. He's got the persona for it. He's got the coaching at this point. He's pretty darn mechanically sound. So we're really worried about him at that point. The floor is very high for JJ, I think. I think at the very least you're getting a Alex Smith game manager type. And there's not many people that would turn that down right now.
Yeah, and it seems like probably the biggest knock I've seen a lot of people have, like national conversation, is just he doesn't have as many attempts. You haven't seen him throw the ball like these other quarterbacks. And is you think that's something that could hurt him? And I guess, no, I'm not supposed to ask 2 questions in 1 question, but also, is he the kind of guy, do you think he just need to sit for a little bit before he becomes the full-time starter, wherever he goes?
A lot of people have said he needs to sit. I think if you want him to be potentially a star in the league, you're going to want him to sit for a year. If you want him to be a game manager, I think you've got that right now. You could play him. I don't know how much he's going to progress at that point. So, but no, I think with JJ, that first part of the question, this is a guy that can absolutely be great. Okay. I don't have any issues with his game at this point where, I'm sitting there going, he's not inaccurate. He's got it's not great, but he's got a really good arm. And he has seen a lot of football at Michigan in 2 years. Now, you can say, he hasn't thrown a lot of attempts. But there's a guy that was drafted in the first round of 2005 who had 2 NFL running backs in his backfield, just like JJ did. And didn't win a national championship, went first round, won a Super Bowl, several league MVPs. Oh, yeah, it was Aaron Rodgers. But if you go compare those 2 and their college stats, put them right next to each other, they're very, very similar in the amount of football that they saw and the amount of attempts that they took in college. So, I can understand. I think attempts is, when you say, oh, he didn't throw the balls that much, I don't think you're really worried about that unless we're talking about a 1-year starter like Trey Lance was. He's got 2 years. He's thrown the ball 600, 650 times in college, in the Big Ten, been to the playoff, won a national championship. He's seen high-level football in college, and that doesn't concern me.
So, Jaden Daniels, and I'll be honest, the first time I saw him play with LSU, I'll be honest, I didn't watch live games when he was at Arizona State. I watched mostly SEC on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. When I watched the game at Florida State, and early on in his first year at LSU, I saw, okay, he makes one read and he's going to run. that was kind of, and he was safe with the football too. He wasn't going to put it anywhere where it was going to be in danger. He really showed growth just as a passer those 2 years there at LSU. What do you see out of him that you see that translates to becoming a good pro quarterback?
That's a really good point to start off with, which was, the progression that he had at LSU. We were talking about that on the Sick podcast last week. And one of the things that we were kind of saying was, when he came out and well, at least went to LSU and was started playing, I did not take him seriously as a quarterback prospect. I was like, I can't believe that we're even doing this right now. Like, this is, Jaden Daniels, goofy looking, So when he came out in 23 and actually started running through reads, running through progressions, making good throws, throwing the deep ball touch, I was blown away. I was like, oh man, we got to take him seriously at this point. But what translates is, first off, that pure athletic ability. I mean, that's something we've seen Lamar Jackson come into the league. We've seen, running quarterbacks kind of become what the league is shifting toward. So that's going to. But you still have, even when you're a running quarterback, you still have to be able to make those throws. And he's got a beautiful deep ball. He's definitely got the ability to process. And we know that because Brian Kelly was talking about that last year, saying he's got the ability to process. He just needs to pull the trigger. He just needs to have the confidence. And that's what you really saw him take a huge step in this past year, was the confidence that he's playing with, the confidence he throws with. So, I think he's going to need weapons around him, just as most any quarterback is going to. But you put him in the right system, you mold that offense for him so that he can use his legs, get outside the pocket, improvise. It's the same way that, Greg Roman and those guys designed for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. You're gonna be very successful, I think, at the next level with this guy, and I think he can play right away.
So I mentioned all three of these quarterbacks, and I'm going to set you up for this question. You make the decision for the Washington Commanders. Which one of these quarterbacks would you take?
I'm going to think about Cliff. I'm going to think about the weapons that I have on this team. I have a really good receiving core with Terry McLaurin leading that group. I'm probably going to address tight end later in the class. Austin Eckler just came over from the Chargers to bolster my backfield, which was already really good with Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez. Or no, excuse me, Brian Robinson Jr., Chris Rodriguez. Antonio Gibson's moved on. So I've got three really good running backs. I've got some really good receiver weapons to use. I've got probably a tight end coming along down the line. I've added some really nice offensive linemen. I'm probably going to go ahead and take Jaden Daniels at 2, if it's me, because I I have the weapons for him to be successful. I could bring a multi-layered run attack and kind of let Cliff cook with the way that he's going to design the offense and draw up the plays. Jaden would be my guy there at 2.
So, and I agree with you. That's kind of where I like. I just really enjoyed watching him play. I mean, I completely changed my mind. I'm stubborn, John. I'm stubborn. When I see a quarterback or anybody, it's hard for me to change my mind. He changed my mind, and that's one of the few I think I remember me just watching football being able to do. Caleb Williams. Look, we all know this is going to be the number 1 pick going to the Bears. They didn't trade, especially when they traded Justin Fields. That was just kind of in place. I'm Justin Fields. I kind of probably a little ticked off. Said, you've added playmakers around him potentially when you didn't do that for me, bringing in Keenan Allen, who's good when healthy. That's the important part. When healthy, DeAndre Swift's a good one. Of course, offense coordinator Shane Waldron. Just Caleb Williams, just kind of just seeing how the Bears are constructing their offense. How do you see that working out with him if, as we all expect, that is the pick?
I think it's going to go all right. The real question with him is he a guy that can run the offense from the pocket? And I think that's what he was trying to show at his pro day, was that he doesn't have to run around and, be outside the pocket to make a throw. So I think he got caught up. He's a hero ball player. He's going to be a gunslinger. He's going to go out there and he's going to try to win his way. And you have to wonder if some of that this past year was because of the lack of just talent that he had around him at times. Just trying to make something happen, make anything happen. Played extremely well, all things considered, I think. I think that it's really easy to say, oh, well, they're getting weapons, for Caleb Williams that they didn't do for Justin. Well, I seem to recall that, the Bears didn't draft DJ Moore I think they actually traded for him. That was part of the trade package for the first overall pick. I know that they went out and they got running backs. I know that they thought they had a really good receiver, Darnell Mooney. I know they went and got a tight end in Cole Kmet, who is when you talk to talent evaluators, we always say quarterback's best friend's tight end. It's a reliable tight end. So they got him that too. And so I don't think necessarily they didn't get Justin Fields weapons. I think that Justin was starting to get some synergy at the end of the season, and they blew it up because they don't have enough faith in, what was going on. So for Caleb, I think it goes okay. You got a lot of weapons to work with. Keenan's going to be really good. You're probably going to add a third wide receiver in the draft so that you can kind of shift out Tyler Scott, who's their number 3 at the moment, use him in specialty type situations. And in the meantime, you're going to hope that Caleb develops and can run an offense from the pocket. That's where you're going to try to keep him. You're going to try to let him run plays on script and, be that quarterback of the future. That's what you're going to hope. And so I think it goes okay. I don't think it goes great year one.
Yeah, well, I mean, he just needs to expect that the best he can do is come in second place in the North because, Jordan Love's going to own that division for the next 10, 15
Detroit,
years.
bro. Detroit, don't sleep on them Lions again.
Well, where my allegiance lies when it comes to the NFL.
Yeah.
So, we got to work. Can we work Favre into this podcast somehow? Because we didn't mention too the Packer quarterback and the former Packer quarterback.
We could work Favre in there. It'd be easy because Frank Gore Jr.'s in this class coming out of Southern Mississippi. That's Brett Favre's alma mater. Yeah, there you go.
We have Brett Favre mentioned, so we have checked all the boxes there. Finally, Bo Nix, which in the state of Alabama, I do feel like that name is still a lightning rod.
Yeah,
I think there's the Auburn fan base. I think there's part of them that are happy he had success away. They understood the situation. He was better off getting away from Auburn and going to Oregon. And then some Auburn fans probably still felt, well, he just was never any good. That's just kind of the half of it is he left Auburn, he abandoned Auburn, blah 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 blah. When you look at Bo Nix, just from what he was at Auburn, and I think we saw some good things. I know a lot of people do not want to talk good about Brian Harsin, but I think Bo Nix started to show some good things that 1 year under Harsin before he got hurt and then he transferred to Oregon. What did you see from Bo Nix just overall in his career from the transition Auburn, Oregon to turn him into a draft prospect? Because when he was at Auburn, if you would have said this is a guy potentially could be a first-round draft pick, people would have laughed, but now, you see what he did at Oregon, great success. What did you see?
I think it's a system. You play your first couple years at Auburn in a Gus Malzahn system that's just not a fit for you. It's not the style of quarterback that Bo Nix is. He's an improviser, but he's not necessarily a running type quarterback, and those are the quarterbacks that always had the most success in Malzahn's offense. Even as he's moved on and that offense has started to evolve at Central Florida, they had a lot of success with John Rice Plumlee at quarterback, and when he was able to use his legs, that's when they were winning games. So that's I think that's the first thing is that the systems just didn't fit him. Even Harsin's system wasn't a great fit for him either. He did start to show improvement. He worked with Jordan Palmer that offseason, one of the best quarterback coaches in the country, arguably some would say the best. And, you saw some of that start to come together. But what happened is he went to Oregon. He got in a system that much better suited his skill set. Spread it out. Let's run 4 wide receiver sets. Maybe we'll throw a tight end in there sometimes. Maybe not. You got a running back out of the backfield. Just go cook, Bo. Just go make the read. We're going to put, 2 guys in a zone. You're going to have to figure out who that defender's playing and just throw the ball. And, that's what he can do when you simplify it down. 45 touchdowns, 3 interceptions this year. That's insane. Even when we talk about Pac-12, he really I think he's a good processor. He's got a really good arm and can push the ball down the field. And there's a really good chance that he gets in the first round, and we got 5 quarterbacks going first round because there's a lot of teams right now that need a quarterback. And you look at a guy like him and say, hey, he can run those simple reads. He could process that information. He's been a starter for 5 years as well. He's played more games than any quarterback, I think, in college football history. Like, let him go out there and play, and we'll hand him the keys and see what happens the next couple of years.
Yeah, because you were mentioning, and I heard I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah about a few weeks ago. He was on with Dan Patrick, and he talked about Bo Nix. If you had to just bet on which one of these quarterbacks could start first, it may be him just because of his experience. Not saying he could be the best
Mhm.
quarterback in this class, but just the guy that's most experienced, most ready to just go ahead and start for a team. You look at the first round of the draft. If he goes first round, where are some places you potentially could see Bo Nix land?
So I think really this might sound crazy. If Denver and Las Vegas are both picking 12 and 13 still and don't trade back, that's where I think you see him come down. Assuming that neither one of those teams are able to trade up either. So if you look at Denver, actually, let me pull this up over my side. There's a bunch of I've got this quarterback tracker in my NFL guide, just literally tracking the depth charts across the league, so you can see who has their quarterback locked up and who doesn't. So right now we've got 6 teams that don't have a real true starting quarterback, and it's Chicago taking Caleb Williams. It's Denver, Las Vegas, Minnesota. Minnesota's trying to figure out, are they going to be able to move up and get McCarthy, or are they going to get May, who there's a lot of ties with Minnesota and Drake May, so that's a potential possibility. New England Patriots, they've kind of started to talk about maybe Jacoby Brissett starting this year, maybe thinking about a quarterback later, who knows? And the Washington Commanders are picking 2. So that really cuts you down to 2 teams that don't have the draft capital to move up and make a play for a quarterback, and that's Denver and that's Las Vegas. So between those 2 right there at 12 and 13, I could see him going to either one of those places. Sean Payton would love to have a quarterback like Nix. That kind of fits that style that he likes, the quick compact release, get the ball out quickly, Drew Brees-esque, lots of experience, make the right read. That would make a lot of sense for him to go to Denver. And then you've got Las Vegas too, the Raiders. They need a quarterback. They brought in, Gardner Minshew, who presumably to be a backup behind. They got Aiden O'Connell there. I don't think they're going to leave those 2, running their quarterback room this year. So both of those teams, I don't think he's going to get past either one of them. So assuming that they're both sitting there at 12 and 13, he'll be a top 15 pick, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you want to go into the season with O'Connell and Minshew. Look, Minshew is probably one of the best, if not the best, backup quarterback in the league, and somebody I think it's good to have if you had a rookie quarterback.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. You got to have somebody that's going to feel as your starter with those. So it's going to be exciting. There's plenty of the quarterback. I think we could do a 3-hour, 4-hour podcast to count all these quarterbacks. There's plenty of them, but it's going to be interesting in a month when we find out where all these guys land in the NFL draft. And John, as always, appreciate you coming on. Kept you a few minutes longer than I said I would, but it's always great to have you
Always
on the show.
do. It's okay. I always run long. It just, people, it's like we started doing these draft profiles on the Sick Pod this week with Adam Rank and doing Bears shows and stuff. And we've got them across the network with a bunch of the team specific stuff. But, it's like every single time we sit down to record, it's like, okay, it will be 5 to 10 minutes and we're running to like 15. So, I'm always over. It's okay. You say 20 minutes. I just assume 30.
Yeah, I think it's that way to podcast for, which I think is better than doing radio sometimes. Radio, it's going to be 15 minutes at the most usually, unless you can get a guest to hang out for 2 segments, but then you got to reset. It's just different. That's what a podcast side of things is a little bit better than radio. But yeah, we always do it anyways. But John, where can people find you and check out your work and check out all your NFL draft stuff?
Really, most of the stuff that we're doing now is podcasting at the Sick Pod NFL Draft, and then you've got just anything that I write, anything that goes up there is going to be on my Twitter. So at Draft Vogel or X, whatever we're calling it now. That's where you can catch all my stuff and just keep up with everything that I'm up to.
All right. Sounds good, John. Appreciate the time, and look forward to when we can do this again sometime down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You can check out the Philip Jordan Show podcast over at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of this show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater. You can email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. All right. Once again, thanks to John for coming on the show. A lot of fun chatting with him. Just kind of looking ahead to the weekend. Let you guys, if you want to watch some football, the UFL kicks off this weekend. The Birmingham Stallions. They will be defending, well, trying to win 3 in a row. I wouldn't say they're defending a title. They were the USFL champions, and then they'll play Arlington Renegades, who are the XFL champions. If you want to know more about this stuff, I have a podcast that's coming back this week. This is me officially announcing it here on this one. Spring Football Report coming back once a week, 30 to 40 minutes, talking all things. It'll be all things UFL. We'll see how it goes if we continue it after the season. But, hey, it'll be 12, 13 weeks, more football podcasts for you to digest. It'll be on the YouTube channel. Yeah, check it out. Previewing, talking about the Birmingham Stallions on this week. That'll come up Thursday or Friday is when that will go down. But also we have the NCAA tournament. And I wanted to pull the bracket up real quick before we get out of here. And there you go. So we're in the Sweet 16. The SEC did not do good. Only 2 of the 8 teams did make it in to the Sweet 16. Just know that on Thursday night at 6:09 CBS, Channel 4 for everybody in Dothan, Clemson and Arizona, that is the West region, the 2-6 matchup. The following that on CBS will be the 1-4 matchup in the West region, North Carolina playing Alabama. Also on Thursday night, this will be over on TBS and True TV. This is in the East region. UConn will play San Diego State, rematch of last year's national championship game. And then you'll have Iowa State and Illinois in the second matchup there. And then on Friday in the South region, you'll have at 6:09, number 2 Marquette playing 11 seed NC State. And then after that one on CBS, you'll have Houston playing Duke. And then in the Midwest region, you'll have number 1 Purdue playing Gonzaga. That'll be on TBS and True TV. That's around 6:39 tip there. And then following that will be 2nd seed Tennessee and 3-seeded Creighton out in the Midwest. And just kind of looking at it real quickly, I say if you're on YouTube watching video anywhere, I have the bracket up on the screen. I am going to go with, which I'm sure this will be completely horrible and won't work out anyway, UConn, San Diego State. I'm going to go with UConn there. I'm going to go with Iowa State to win. So I think those 2 will meet up in the Elite 8. I'll go with UConn to get to the Final 4. North Carolina, Alabama. I think North Carolina will take that one. I've got Arizona, so then I'm going to go with North Carolina. I think North Carolina and UConn will make up 1/2 of the Final 4. Houston and Duke, I'm going to call an upset. I think Duke is going to win that one. It's weird just saying Duke and upset, but the times we're in. NC State, Marquette, I like Marquette to win that one. And then I like Duke to get to the Final 4. Purdue and Gonzaga, I am going to go with Purdue, and then I'm going to go with Tennessee to win there. Then it's going to be a very physical matchup between Purdue and Tennessee. You know what? I'm going to show some SEC bias here. I think Tennessee beats Purdue, and then we'll have Tennessee versus Duke in the Final 4, and then we will have UConn and North Carolina. So we'll see how it works out. We'll see how it all shakes out. And that's going to do it for the show. Once again, check out the show on YouTube. I'm going to cut this show up and have different segments up on individually on YouTube. If you caught the live video on Tuesday, this may be something I start doing Tuesday nights. Do live video as I recorded the show fully, and then podcast be out on Wednesday morning. But if you are checking out a podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. Remember, you can also check out the show over at WiregrassDailyNews.com. Please check it out. The Wiregrass High School Football Report did a new episode there with New Geneva County head coach Al Gilmore. Hope you'll check that out. Check out my other podcast, The Spring Football Report. And also check it out on YouTube. As I said, Philip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on the video. And also read that on a future edition as well. You can email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com and read all my written work over at Last Word on college football. Everybody has a great rest of the week. And until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Philip Jordan Show. Subscribe to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch the show over at the Philip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Got a question or topic idea? Email the show at sportstalkphilipjordan@gmail.com. Join us next time for more great football talk.